So you may have noticed in the past year there have been a lot of visible changes in downtown Urbana, a lot of new storefronts, but there's been some other really exciting changes that are a little less visible, but they're no less exciting. And those are some of the new innovative businesses and talent and the growth of some of our existing innovative companies in downtown Urbana. What we're starting to see is a new culture of innovation, a lot of collaboration. In downtown Urbana in particular, we're seeing lots of interaction between these new businesses, but also community-wide. And it's a culture of innovation, it's a culture of entrepreneurism, and it's a new combinations of skill sets that we haven't necessarily seen or haven't necessarily associated with our identity of downtown Urbana until recently. So today we're going to have a discussion, and we have a very exciting panel of companies, folks who are doing great work in downtown, incredibly talented and accomplished individuals. I would encourage you to read all their complete bios that are on your tables. And so we have Lori Gold Patterson, the CEO of Pixo, longstanding part of our downtown. Sanjay Patel, CEO of Personify, a new addition to downtown Urbana. Matt Cho is the principal of Cake Design Development, but he is also, I guess they would call you the creative director of CoLab, a co-working space in downtown Urbana. Chirag Shah is the founder of Launchable and also runs Patent Vantage. And I guess I'm not going to try to talk about all the things you folks do because it's really impressive, and I think I will get the words wrong to describe the details of your work. So I'm going to leave it to you. And Tim Montague, the tech specialist or tech entrepreneurship specialist for the Small Business Development Center in the Economic Development Corporation here in Champaign County. Thank you so much for your participation. We are going to start off unamplified, so if anyone in the back is having a hard time hearing, please raise your hand. We're also going to have a very open dialogue. We're going to do 4 questions to our panelists, and I just want to encourage the panel to follow up with one another, ask each other questions, and let's just focus on having a good conversation here. So perhaps the first question we want to start off with is, what has been happening with your business in the last year? And I would ask that you also just take the opportunity to introduce yourself a little more to the group.
I think he stared at me, so I'm on this end.
Sure.
So again, I'm Lori Gold Patterson. I'm the CEO of Pixo. We've been in downtown Urbana. We are actually planning our Sweet 16 anniversary for August, this upcoming August. We're a group of now 31 creatives and developers who we do custom application development for large businesses, for entrepreneurs. More of our obvious work is large websites that you see throughout our community, throughout our state and country. But then we also do a lot of systems that run businesses. So what's been happening in our business in the last year is a lot. We went from 18 people a year ago to 31 people. And we've been a company that has grown quite slowly on purpose. And we made a concerted decision that we wanted to grow, and we wanted to grow in downtown Urbana. Maybe one of the more relevant things for this conversation is that about a year ago, we recognized that we were going to be growing out of our space. We're located, we're the back half on Goose Alley, the back half of the Cinema Art Gallery. And it's a beautiful, beautiful studio, but we were growing out of it very quickly. And we got the word out, and the city of Urbana worked really hard with us to, our number one goal was to stay in Urbana. Our identity is really just enmeshed in Urbana. We were recruited heavily, I will say, by lots of wonderful developers and such in Champaign, and we did look at lots of things, but we, thank goodness, were able to stretch into an annex and open up a Cafe Pixo just 2 buildings down. So we've expanded ourselves. We are, I will say, once again needing to expand, and so we're back in those conversations again.
good. I suppose you're looking at me, Lori, but you know, do you gentlemen want to go next? Burning desire? No. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks Brandon for inviting me. I'm the newest, I would say, business resident of Urbana. We moved into our space just a mere 18 days ago. So I live in Urbana, so it's very nice for me to also have my company in Urbana. Very nice feeling. A little bit of background about me. I've been part of the community for about 15 years. I came here 15 years ago as part of the university. I'm on the faculty of the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. And during those 15 years, always had an interest in starting companies. This particular one, Personify, we started 4 years ago now. And as an offshoot of some work we were doing at the university. And we ended up at the research park, where a lot of companies that come out of the university that spin out, they end up there. It's a great place. Wonderful place for us to have spent the previous 4 years. We reached a point where you were sort of growing out of our space in the research park at the incubator Enterprise Works. And ended up meeting this fellow here, Matt Cho, I don't know, about a year ago, maybe a little more, and he was telling me about this great project he was undertaking for developing a space in downtown Urbana. He described it to me and he sold me on it almost immediately. And as he developed it, it sort of always kept us in mind about being the anchor tenant of that space. Lo and behold, 18 days ago, we moved into that space. There's, at this point, 4 of us that are in that space, along with interns that are students at the university that come easily via bus to our site, spend some time with us during the week. The company overall is 30 people. We have a site here in Urbana. Now in Urbana, it's our headquarters. We have a site in Chicago, in the River North area, with a lot of other startup companies around us. It's a very nice environment there. We also have a development center in Vietnam. So even as a young company, we're quite international. In the last year, we've grown primarily through venture investment. We're a young company still trying to find the roots in the marketplace and grow, as startup companies often are. The market is growing and we're growing with it. But it's been a great year and really happy to now be part of the Urbana scene.
All right. Well, I don't know where to start, but I guess within the last year, I didn't really have a business. And so if you were to describe what was happening last year, it's been a lot of construction. I put on, I guess, a contractor hat. And so it's rare that I get to wear clothes that are clean now, but it's good that everything is now finished for the most part. But I guess if I can associate with this emerging ecosystem, it's, I guess the cake design is essentially an upstart itself. Like I said, it's not a very traditional real estate development company, but we try to really focus on collective uses because we think collectively it makes it a lot stronger. And so I'm fortunate to have met people like Sanjay and also Lori and Chirag who have, decided to come together and make Urbana's identity a lot stronger. And I think without that, then really I still just have empty buildings. But hopefully, I guess my development firm is, entering its second year, that there's a couple more projects online. And it's always going to be the same message, is how do we collectively celebrate local entrepreneurs within the area and then make them, give them a platform to share that with the rest of the community.
I'm Chirag. I'm the managing director of a company called Patent Vantage, where we provide patent strategy and research services. So it's mostly a support organization, consulting firm for law firms and corporations. We're headquartered in Chicago, and the reason, kind of like Sanjay, I met Matt through a mutual friend, and he sold me on his idea, but we were still sort of unsure of why we need an office locally. I live in Danville. I'm sorry, you know, but thanks. I know. I'm local, and you know, I did wanted to participate with the community more, and find a way to engage some of my expertise with the community. And prior to some hats I've worn recently is I was the ties, the first ties expert with the SBDC, and so, you know, exposing myself to the entire entrepreneurship culture happening regionally and throughout the state. And I was also a tenant in Enterprise Works as well prior to. So understanding and appreciating what all is happening in this ecosystem. You know, and so the initial impetus was to house a Patent Vantage office within that space. And as I was there, I figured, you know, I'm not going to really need all the space there, and we were going to have some interns coming in and out. So I thought, how else could I use this space? And I have some expertise, and as well as a lot of contacts within the VC world, other professionals, and I felt, you know, maybe there's an opportunity for me to maybe incubate a few tech companies myself. I'm on a one-to-one mentorship level, and or you know, not really as any sort of just adding to this ecosystem. You know, sort of expanding what we already have, and attracting maybe a different type of clientele that would not go to the university or someone that's outside the university. During my time at Ties, you know, there's a lot of entrepreneurial folks within our region that don't know where to go. So maybe, you know, ideally this would be a location they could come to and get some expertise. So we're going to have two models here: Launchable, which is called so my tech space is called Launchable, and essentially what the idea there is, the goal is, we would house 2 or 3 companies that we can kind of curate and work with hands-on. And then we'll have a sort of membership model where we'll hold events and training that's open to a wider community as well. So.
I'm Tim Montague. I'm the second Ties counselor for the SBDC. And unlike everybody else here, I'm not a business owner, or I'm not wearing that hat today. I am an entrepreneur. But we work at the SBDC with existing and startup businesses throughout Champaign County and as far afield as Bloomington Normal, Decatur, Danville, of course, and then building ties to Chicago, Indianapolis, St. Louis, because we are part of that greater ecosystem. And what's going on in downtown Urbana is wonderful, and it's just lovely to see what a little bit of local government incentives have done for the tech ecosystem here in downtown. And I think we've just seen the beginning of, you know, a new kind of wave of entrepreneurship coming into downtown. And I just really want to thank the city of Urbana for, you know, making that a priority, because it really works. And not that Champaign doesn't also need to mix up their game. Obviously, Champaign is a different ecosystem. There's a ton going on there, a lot of good stuff, and we work with entrepreneurs in both cities equally and love the entire system. We would love to see more of what is going on at CoLab, though. There's, you know, co-working is on fire in this country, and it is the seed for many what are today solo entrepreneurs who will be tomorrow's founders and growth opportunities in the economy. So it's a real pleasure to be here.
Any follow-ups, I guess? Would any of the panelists be interested in hearing more about anything that was said?
You know, I wanted to ask you, Lori, from the first time I met you, and you told the story about how you got into training tech talent because you recognized that you weren't finding the talent that you needed for Pixo. Have things changed in your opinion, and what do you see for the future of tech in downtown Urbana?
Right, that's a really good question. So we started in 1998 at a time when developers and IT professionals were impossible to find. And both my brother and I had come out of corporate America at the same time, and we were sitting in coffee houses in Urbana and Champaign being served by brilliantly educated, underemployed individuals. And my brother had this great dream one night and came and met me for coffee and said, why don't we create developers? Why don't we we're surrounded by these brilliant, highly educated folks who have the processes, the thought processes that are very aligned with development, and we will train them on the job. So that, within about 4 months, we started offering free computer programming classes, and that turned into a not-for-profit called the Computer Learning and Mentoring Center, CLAM, and it was in operation for about 5 years. We then, next to it, became just a corporation and a consulting firm. But we housed that not-for-profit for 5 years. So we moved, I think, in that time 3 times, and again, all through Urbana, but our requirements were that we would always have classroom space. So we had a real commitment to our original mission and felt like it is our responsibility as a company in a particular sector that has an imbalance of supply and demand to really invest in creating that supply. About 5 years into our business, the tides really turned, and we had the dot-com bust and several other things in our economy, and no longer at that point then you had developers who were not finding jobs, and so the CLAM mission became sort of outdated. In the last probably 2 years, 2.5 years, I think nationally maybe a little longer than that, locally maybe a little shorter than that, we're back at the state of recognizing that there's much higher demand than there is supply for tech talent. The interesting difference right now, and we've been struggling with this, and we have tried a couple of things where we've been kind of bringing our CLAM hats back together. We created what's called the Applicable Programming Center, the App Center, to train some folks. What's interesting right now, and that these are some colleagues that I think we all need to work together on this, is that what's really lacking in the market is senior level developers, not entry level developers, where we had the luxury when we started the company to really need entry level and to grow them. So that's really the big difference right now, but the market is very similar.
Well, let's move on to the next question. What have you noticed taking place in downtown Urbana over the last year? From the perspective of yourself as a resident or a visitor, or?
Yeah, I'm thinking what happened in the last 18 days, I'm not quite sure.
Well, as someone being on the street day to day, I definitely have seen a lot more activity. And I think there's a lot more food-based businesses that are coming to the table. And that's very encouraging because in addition to tech talent, I think there's also a culture gap that also, or I guess not, I won't say culture, but what do you do after you work for so long? Like you need places to hang out and decompress or something like that. So I think as more and more of those type of businesses come to the table, I think maybe it is hopefully a chicken egg type thing where, if we get a couple more cafes or restaurants, that maybe some more tech people will identify with this area and be interested in participating. I guess that would kind of be a question for you guys, if the intent is to get more tech talent to the area, whether it's senior or even entry level, like what other culture-based things, because that's where, I kind of live and die, is just, what kind of spaces would be activated that would bring this type of stuff?
Well, I remember we had a meeting recently with Gary Dirac, the founder of iSight, and what he said was entrepreneurship is a lifestyle, and that lifestyle needs to have, obviously, a place to work, but a place to have fun and a place to live. So I think if that ecosystem begins to create itself here, tech talent will be drawn to the region on its own, because I think we kind of need all of that here, and I think you've seen the beginning of that to happen. So. For me personally, honestly, I haven't been around Urbana that much. I passed through the library or the mall on my way to Danville. So, but it's been great just being here locally. It's so much more vibrant. I see it's attracting a whole different type of population than I have previously seen, and that I wouldn't have associated with, I guess, prior to. But you sit in the coffee shop, it's always full. There's a lot of students there now, so a lot of students are getting on the Silver or Green Line and making the trip down to Urbana, which is great. And just anecdotally, from my discussions with people I brought through, they're just shocked by what's happening. I mean, I've routinely heard them say, you know, I can't believe I'm sitting in Champaign-Urbana. I can't believe this seems like we're in Chicago. My sister was just here this weekend who lives in Chicago. And so, I mean, I guess if it's a culture, or if it's an environment, or it's that feeling that you can't really quantify, it's beginning to take shape, you know, in our city. So,
I'd speak to that. Having been in business, and I grew up in Urbana, right on Oregon Street, and went away for some time and came back kicking and screaming. I told my husband I would follow him anywhere for him to get his doctorate except Champaign-Urbana, and this is the only place he applied. But within a couple of weeks, really, we had our first child with us, and I was sold. But there's been quite a number of Renaissance periods in downtown Urbana, and some that feel similar to this, some that feel more exciting, less exciting to this. And I think we all need to be really aware and cognizant that we're at one of those moments again, and to look back in history and see what we did or didn't do to push ourselves over the chicken and the egg hump, and bring all of those resources and all of that intent to the table. We have another moment to pay attention to this and to push it over, and we can certainly speak to some of that. But I think this is not something that hasn't happened before, but it can be something that doesn't have to happen from the beginning again.
Would anyone else like to answer the question of what happened in the last year from your perspective? Or would you like to have other questions for each other?
Clearly, downtown is on fire. That's the thing that's most present for me and the people I talk to. With CoLab opening and the coffee shop and the pizzeria and all the other retail that's on Main Street now. It's like Main Street is back. It's a viable place to work and play and shop, and it just wasn't that 6 years ago when I first moved to Urbana at all. So things ebb and flow. Lori has a good point, you know, about we need to take the long view, and we need to keep our eye on the ball and be intentional about what it is that we want to create in downtown. We don't want a traffic jam. And what's present for me about, you know, what are the opportunities? I think of what One Main has done with mixed-use development. That seems to me to be a very important signal to pay attention to, and an opportunity to create a place where people can live and work in the same place.
And I would speak to the we don't want a traffic jam. I would say that what I have noticed with Urbana, in particular, kind of the governing of Urbana, is that we are so clear about what we don't want that we stop the beginnings of things. And I think we do want a traffic jam. We don't need to be worried about it. Let's deal with the traffic jam when it's here. And we do want noise, and we do want people living downtown, and we do want all of that. And there's so much fear, and I feel like the way that the city has been governed, and excuse me, but it has stopped things in its tracks. And the beauty of what's happening right now, and again, it has happened before, is that no one was scared of this. Nobody knew to be scared of this. This might bring too much to downtown. And so it's getting some traction. And I would say, move forward, and let's not be scared of anything that we may create. That's what the city planners are here for, is to deal with all of that wonderful growth as it's happening.
You know, I think it's a great time to be thinking about downtown anywhere. Urbana, Champaign, Milwaukee. I mean, I'll give you my perspective. It's the urban revival, right? People are moving back to urban centers right now. It's the younger generation, even younger than myself, that feel the affinity for the critical mass. So I think if we were thinking about it from an investment perspective, where should we, as Urbana residents, be spending our energy? it really ought to be downtown. It really ought to be adding to keep that critical mass growing. You know, coming back to our decision about moving the company out of Research Park, this is not an area that's in lack of space. You could have moved anywhere. Pick a cornfield and wait a year and there's a building there that we could have moved into, right? So space is not the issue, and it's cheap space. What we wanted is environment, atmosphere, because to attract the creative people that we need to compete on a global scale, as we have aspiration to do, we wanted a space where we can bring that talent. And we looked at a lot of space. Urbana was the place we chose. I think it has a ways to go for the third, the fourth, the fifth, the 10th company to come in. But you know, I think Lori and Tim and the others are right that, you know, this is where we want to be investing. And it will be cyclical. We'll get things wrong and it will fail and there'll be a new growth. But, you know, it's all about trying and learning from the mistakes.
That's actually a great segue into the next question. What are you looking at in terms of your business, or in Tim's case, the work you're doing in the community? What's your outlook for the next 3 years?
I don't know, for CoLab, I think it's, if we can keep promoting this experimental, risk-taking attitude, I think that's part of why I started CoLab, is that, you know, to really attract people that could enter at a very not as risky level of signing a year lease and say, let's collaborate, run your business on 80% of the time, but those chances that you have to collaborate, let's try it. And I think hopefully in the next 3 years that, you know, there'll be a lot of spin-offs off of that. And whether that's co-working in Champaign or in other places, or if there's another co-working space in Urbana, it really doesn't matter to me as long as the entrepreneurial, I guess not IQ, I think, but like just this attitude of entrepreneurship and execution is still being promoted, because I think that's what made me come back here, even though I grew up here as a townie, and really there wasn't anything coming back here for except for school, but actually making that investment and saying, stop complaining and start doing something so you don't have something to complain about. I think that was why I want more of this momentum to continue. So.
I mean, everything I see about the economy locally and nationally is positive in the next few years. So I think we can kind of, you know, expect more of this slow but steady growth. It's not going to be off the charts. It's not going to be the late 90s, but it's going to be positive. And so that's, you know, that makes all of our jobs easier. That there will be investments made. There will be entrepreneurs who are inspired to take the risk. There will be companies who open new facilities and so forth and so on. So the question is, you know, how do we as a community create a more vibrant ecosystem, right? There's nothing holding us back except our own willingness to collaborate and be stronger together. And that's, you know, that's what really excites me about what Matt's doing here is that intention of we want to work with, we want to bring business people and developers together in collaboration. It's no longer this, I'm the landlord and you're the tenant. It's we're in this game together.
For Pixo, in our next 3 years, I think we will hope not to grow at the same pace that we grew this last year. I expect that we will still see some growth. We have really focused ourselves on, we have a really strong professional development emphasis at our company. So every staff member has $2,500 plus to spend in being trained either here or elsewhere. And we're looking at, for the first time, 31 people are looking at conferences and different opportunities. Some things, when you're really emphasizing that, there's some things that rise to the top. One is what are our opportunities to collaborate with other organizations who are needing to develop their talent in similar ways. We have a really long history here of having strong partnerships with businesses, some of whom could have been considered our competitors, some of whom aren't, but we have a really strong value that it's like having all of the fast food restaurants in one place. It makes us stronger. So one is really looking, continuing these strong relationships and appreciating that, a couple of my colleagues in our creative department were having coffee last week and talking about kind of their next dreams of some projects. And Sanjay walked in, and we had done some really creative, fun work with him a little time ago, and I think they had just said his name, and he walked in. So we hope for lots of that sort of collaboration. And similar, this is a downtown that does have a history of, I can't tell you how many people I've either engaged with in a project just from seeing them at the Courier Cafe, or hiring somebody because they stopped me in the Courier or at Silver Creek or somewhere, and we start talking and realize that now is the time. So we're really looking for that sort of continued strong collaboration. Oh, the other point I was going to make, though, is on training, this will not be new news for anybody, but the ability to get your staff members out of this town and back to this town is a difficult one. And so I really hope that all the powers that be are spending a lot of time and attention on our modes of transportation in and out of this community.
Yes, Sanjay?
Yeah, it'd be cool to have some light rail between the two downtowns or the three downtowns.
Get on that.
For Launchable, I mean, our success would be measured by companies that we incubate and grow out. So I would love, within the next 3 years, to see at least 3 companies who have graduated and are hopefully here, but at least in our ecosystem, and progressing. So.
Well, and we want that to happen.
Well, we do.
Yes,
exactly.
Put our heads together.
I mean, I think, and obviously the collaboration is continuing, and if Launchable 1.0 is a success, then we'd like to move into a larger space in Urbana and maybe, build that out. So, see how that goes.
Yeah, it strikes me that there is an opportunity for more incubator space in the region. Enterprise Works is a wonderful facility. I mean, it's amazing what is coming out of Enterprise Works and the U of I. But that ecosystem, that geography is not all encompassing. There's room for more, both in downtown Champaign and downtown Urbana. And it will benefit the greater ecosystem. Those companies need dynamic places for their employees to live, work, and play and study. And so it's a win-win when people take risks like this, developing additional resources.
So in the next 3 years, clearly for the company Personify, our hopes are great, immense success, obviously. Not modest success, immense success. And, I think we'll get there. But I think I'll answer a more interesting version of this question. My hopes for Urbana, downtown Urbana specifically, maybe broadly the community, I think we're just seeing the beginning of like a burst of growth in terms of technology created by the university that's commercialized and that lands up here and incubates here and grows starting here, as opposed to comes out of the university, lands up in California or in New York or in Massachusetts, as it's happened in the past. I think it's changing now. And it's a long story as to why I think it's changing. We don't have to talk about that, but it's changing. I believe it. And I think we'll see more companies that spring out using some of the great technology that this university tends to create and land here in this community. Ours is one of the many that will come. And I can see a pipeline of this happening already amongst students that I know, colleagues that I know, who want to be involved in their companies. See, one of the things that's changing is it's not that the companies go and somebody else runs them or the technology goes to some other place. It's the level of entry, the barrier to entry for starting a company and getting it funded and being an entrepreneur has come down substantially to the point where pretty much anyone in this room can be an entrepreneur. Sorry, Matt. All of us could. You've done well. It's all these people could become tenants of yours. So my point being that what I'd like to see is that pipeline of innovation coming out of the university, landing up here in the community, and growing up and creating that critical mass continues to grow. And I will be a part of that somehow, I hope.
Yeah, this reminds me of some of the conversations I've had within the last month. And I guess this word has always come as like serial entrepreneurship. And like you said, anybody can start a company now. It's just a matter of how do you execute and actually get it done. Because the idea is there's plentiful. There's no shortage of ideas. It's just that who has the time to execute and who wants to execute. That's one of the reasons why, again, yeah, I'm here is that I have many ideas, and if you've talked with me, it can get pretty intense with the ideas, but yes. But that's the thing, is like somewhere here, they just go on a whiteboard and then you slowly start incubating that idea, and if maybe not 3 years or 2 years or 1 year, that kind of culture of serial entrepreneurship, I don't know, that's a very interesting thing, is that I can start a restaurant, but then I can also be part of a tech company. If you want your sushi restaurant, that is.
And I do.
Okay. See, we just started another one.
Any other specific hopes for downtown Urbana in the next 3 years, or things you think might happen? Tim, you've seen a lot of activity. Maybe you could give us a taste of just the kinds of businesses that SBDC has been consulting in the last year, and maybe project a little on what.
Yeah, I think, frankly, what you see going on in downtown is representative of the greater entrepreneurial ecosystem. There are a lot of food-based businesses starting up, and I'm benefiting from that, which is great. I always want new and different places to eat, and so that's a strength. Of course, it can be stronger, and I think that's and that's an opportunity, especially for downtown Urbana. Champaign is a more robust. It's just a little further along, right? Other than that, I'm very focused on tech, and I work with a lot of digital startups, which is definitely a trend. The barrier to entry for digital startups is lower than other types of technology companies, right? You get some people in a room with some computers, and away they go, and sky's the limit. So I think that is going to be, it has been, and it will continue to be a strength of this economy. And then it's a smattering, and I love the cluster report that came out of the U of I recently, with pointing out these opportunities in biomedical, in energy, and data. And those, when I talk to people in economic development about that, it's like, yeah, those are kind of the obvious opportunities. There was no real surprise there, I don't think, but you rest on your you need to rely on your strengths, and those are real strong suits of the U of I and the community, and we want to foster that. So I look forward to seeing more biotech and biomedical tech. I think this ecosystem has more capacity for that.
Yeah, and I know we talk a lot about downtown Urbana, and mentioned Champaign, But I really feel that if Champaign and Urbana are marketed as this community, I think there was a report that said we are a promising hub. So, I mean, those kind of things, if we can actually demonstrate and show that it's not just Urbana and it's not just Champaign or the university, but it's all of us together that are doing something, it makes it a much more attractive place to come and live, work, and play, I think.
But I echo Tim's hopes for the next 3 years, which is to see a lot more biotech, life science related technologies emerging here. So I think that's going to happen as well. The trends towards that. So let's see what happens. Especially for Urbana, since it has Carl nearby, and there's some resources there that we may be able to tap into, which are unique. So trying to collaborate with that larger ecosystem that already exists here, especially for the life science industry, I think would be beneficial.
This will give away what an Urbana geek I am. About 8 or 10 years ago, I went through a couple-month period of daydreaming constantly of winning the lottery, and my winnings, my husband was not happy about this at all, my winnings were going to go to incenting all of the wonderful law firms in downtown Urbana to either move upstairs or enable me to build them buildings right around here, and then to incubate businesses throughout the downtown. But that dream also, spread itself further east on Main, and so I would love to see the corridors widened and our fingers on them, and to see really interesting mixed use, but much more really paying attention to the who would want to live in downtown Urbana and get the density up. We have 31 people who are always looking for housing, homeowners, renters. A large number of our employees do walk to work or bike to work. And I would say for the most part, they're pretty satisfied that they've found where they want to live. But every time we have a new employee or someone's looking for a new space, there's some stress about the type of housing that they really would want. And they would all, I would tell you, probably out of 30 people, I bet 20 of them would love to just cross the street and come to work, and to never leave downtown Urbana if they didn't have to.
Any closing thoughts or questions for your fellow panelists?
We haven't talked about this, but I think the Boneyard Creek project is going to significantly catalyze more growth in downtown as well. We've just seen the beginnings of that project really, and of course now it's winter, it's hard to really appreciate, but with the, people like to be around water and streams, and so I'm glad to see Urbana, not turning its back on the creek anymore. You can see what they did with that right on the engineering quad on campus, right? I mean, it is such a lovely place to hang out, and we could have that too, right in downtown, and I look forward to seeing that.
I just want to thank the city for all its support. The grant program you have set up is a great attraction to these tech startups, and so thank you. I think that's keep that ongoing. I think it's beneficial to everyone. It's not, I know it's not a huge sum, but it's enough to get a lot of these tech companies to consider this space versus something else. So thank you.
Most of the businesses that I've seen launch in Urbana are not heavily capitalized businesses, and they are not now. We want to borrow some money from. But other than Sanjay, most of the companies are not heavily capitalized. And one of the conversations, so I was involved in the Urbana Business Association for years, and I would go and talk to any new business that opened and say, when you start to feel fear that you've hit the X mile point and suddenly your revenue is not there, that's the moment. At the very moment that you start to feel it is when you need to start reaching out to your resources. You need to reach out to the Urbana Business Association, reach out to your potentially your strongest clients, and really start getting that word out so that we can rally around you. There's a couple of businesses in the last few years that have gratefully really taken that to heart. And they've, I know SBDC was able to play a key role in helping save a business in downtown Urbana. Pixo, we were able to start, all going out to lunch very regularly, and really just put it on our radar. So I would say also for the city and for all of us to watch the patterns, encourage these business owners and entrepreneurs to really speak out, and to figure out what resources you have to bring to the table. It's not just a little bit of advice. It's actually some resources that we need to bring to the table to get businesses, help businesses get over those humps, because those humps absolutely happen. Once you then get some traction, you're good to go. Then you're at the early stages, you're so close to zero that if that zero happens for too long, you're out. Once you get some traction, you're still going up and down, but you have your nest egg, and so you don't have that level of fear any longer.
I live in fear, despite having a nest egg. No, but it's a very good point, Lori. I think that young businesses are always kind of living hand to mouth, and even some that are as capitalized as we are. And creating a safety net is really important to get those really interesting and creative people doing things that I think are additive to the community. It's really important to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think Matt's an example of that. I think Matt's, what he's done at CoLab and at Pizza M and Flying Machines Coffee, and who knows what other things he's going to be doing down the road. But these are all, I think, new business models that require some risk-taking. And I'd like to see more people take more risks with new types of ventures in the community.
Is this where we get questions from the audience?
Yeah, I think so. I was curious if Matt wanted to have final word there too, or.
No, I'm just thankful. Again, I guess, we didn't give you guys credit, but the city of Urbana has been really instrumental in this, especially as a developer getting the TIF incentive, but also with this new business incentive. I think that's, designing something like that and actually having people participate, I think has been really interesting to watch. And then also SBDC, Tim, I think a lot of the stuff that you and Greg do to push the culture of co-working and entrepreneurship in Champaign-Urbana, I think is also very important too. So as long as these things keep spinning around, and I know Laura has visited us also, and so I think we're very interested in working together now with the university and other entities, because collectively, hopefully what I've hypothesized with Cafeteria and Company and CoLab, I think, collectively as a community, that's where it gets really fun and, I wouldn't say lucrative, but great.
Great, thank you. Let's have some quick questions, and let's start with the gentleman who started asking a question before.
I guess my question today is this issue you touched on, Lori, about where does everybody live? You're striving for an urban environment. And I've been in the CoLab's building here in downtown Champaign. It has an urban feel to it, an attitude, I think. But again, as I said, I only know one person who actually lives in downtown Urbana. And until maybe it's catching up, Urbana, to the synergy that needs to exist between people who call this their home when they go out to dinner in a block away, or they walk around the corner and there's a grocery store. And we do have grocery stores now over in Lincoln Square, but 5 years ago we didn't have much of anything. 5 or 10 years ago you couldn't buy a washing machine. So, but I don't know if you're aware or what programs or ideas are out there to encourage this residential use of the downtown.
I guess interesting because that's what I did my final year in urban planning. Is I always was on the idea that there needs to be a residential concentration, a permanent base in downtown. But having backtracked a little bit, I really feel like we still need to add more businesses and food still before there is a developer, and not me, that will build that kind of urban infrastructure or housing even, because anybody can build housing in downtown. I don't think there's any lack of lots or developable land. It's just that will it meet that urban quality that everyone kind of says when they live downtown? I think, and that will require rents to rise, I believe, just macroeconomically. I mean, you're seeing that happen in Campus Town right now, where you can get 900, 1,000 a room, and obviously the developers know that, and they're going to build to a higher quality. If you can only get 400, 600, 800 at most here, then you're going to sacrifice, you're going to value engineer some stuff. So if you want that urban environment, I think it might take a little bit longer, but I'm with you there that a permanent downtown population is also key to this.
But he's the second person that lives in downtown, because he lives above Colab.
Anyone else like to respond? Other questions? Howard?
This is a very, very good event. And you said a number of very interesting things. We built a new apartment building near downtown, essentially downtown, a few years ago. But I said to my partners, we've made a mistake. We've got to get rid of this thing as fast as we can, because it's going to be hard to rent. You were correct. I sold it. We got out of the downtown. You said, there's so much negativity here. You're 100% correct. We've tried to develop in Urbana for over 20 years now. We run into more negativity anytime we try to do something new than you could possibly imagine. Two little old women can come to a council meeting, or a zoning meeting, and completely destroy your case or do something. And then, Sanjay, you were right when you said, to do business and to be successful, you gotta take risks. Citizens have to take risks with their property, as well as entrepreneurs who are trying to do something new.
Here, here.
Good comment, yeah.
I'd like to hear you guys' comments on, we're stage one with entrepreneurs, but at some point, some of your companies are going to get to stage two where they're going to need employees. We've heard in the past of development here that those middle managers and those executives are not plentiful here in town. And I think one of the things we need to look at is how do we attract, say, those rebounders, people who out of university or 9 years and have experience. How do we get that workforce back in the community through development so that you guys can grow your companies and keep them here and have the talent and kind of like the responses to that?
I think Lori mentioned that it's a challenge for you. It's certainly a challenge we're facing already to a certain extent. I think every company is going to have its own strategy to deal with that because it's a reality. Our strategy was that we opened an office in Chicago to attract a particular kind of talent that we didn't expect to find here. Nonetheless, our headquarters are here and will continue to grow in ways that make sense for the company in this locale. That's one strategy. I suspect that as we see more success through this first wave or second wave, third wave of company, that other people will come here, but that's a long-term thing. It's not a short-term, immediate thing. I don't know, Lori, how have you guys?
I think so. Each time we find ourselves up against a challenge, a resource challenge, whether it's clients or personnel, we get really creative and figure out what our angle is. some years ago, we really appreciated that we could be the anchor tenant for the Independent Media Center purchasing the post office building. And we were there for about 2 years. We signed a 3-year contract in order for them to get the loan, and that mattered a lot for who we were to be able to bring that sort of energy and attention in downtown Urbana. But about 2 years in, we were recognizing that we were not able to attract the type of clients and the type of personnel that we needed, and so we paid out that years of contract and moved ourselves into a studio that really did represent a much more urban feel and the creative focus that we were looking for. So sometimes it's it's a matter of just your surroundings. I think that one of the things that this county, or at least the cities and the university, are challenged with is a lack of a cohesive message. And when you start to dive in, I'm on the EDC board. I'm also an entrepreneur in residence for the Research Park, so I'm interviewing and supporting and counseling startup companies all the time. The stories about the richness of this community that come out of the folks who are taking advantage of and benefiting from the richness of this community is amazing, both on the executive side as well as on the entrepreneur side. But that story doesn't get out there. I absolutely agree with you that the negativity, I think that we need stronger press that really is focused on the realities of things. I think we need, we want good, solid news. We also really want to hear about the things that are happening. And we want to get rid of the competition that seems to happen in the different bodies in this close vicinity, Champaign-Urbana, downtown, Research Park, and really appreciate that. I think if you look at history, when one area is doing poorly, it actually hurts the other areas. It does not help the other areas. When all of these bodies are strong, you start to see much faster growth. So I think one of the big things is the marketing and the messaging of the successes. I think that the executive level folks are here and want to come here. They just don't know the opportunities that exist, and the companies that need those folks psych themselves out because of the stronger voice that's out there.
Another question from the audience? Eric.
Eric Tash, I think on the EDC. This may partly address Howie's question, but it's culturally related. I hear a lot of talk about collaboration and risk-taking. And I guess on a spectrum of failure being the F word to Silicon Valley, where fail fast and fail often is kind of the culture and has led to a tremendous success. Where is our region in that? Are we closer to one end or the other? And what changes do you think can be made to move toward the fail fast, fail often type of mentality?
I think it's a good question, and I'll present obviously my perspective. In Silicon Valley, you can fail because if you fail, there's a success in that failure. You can pick up the pieces from your bootstraps, move on, and start another company while your previous one is still smoldering. There's just enough critical mass there, right? There is so much going on, and it's not just Silicon Valley. There are other areas where there is that critical mass, New York, Austin, Texas, and many others. I don't know that we have it here. So if you fail, there's going to be a dark period in your life, right? And I think that would inhibit many people from even trying, take a more safe path. My gut feeling, I don't know.
No, I think fortunately or unfortunately, it's a very conservative mentality in the Midwest, and you see that as well as with venture capital funding as well. They're very, a lot of risk aversion, so it's that lack of willing to take the gamble. But I think to Eric's point, the more quickly we can move towards that spectrum, the better our ecosystem will benefit and grow. But I don't think it's going to happen for a long time. So.
I also think it's a framing thing because, like, with marketing, like some of the pop-ups that we've had might not have been the most successful, but we just frame it differently as just that, hey, we got a news team, a Smile Politely article, and basically a bunch of free press for, you know, maybe a minimal investment. And it's also worked on the flip side where someone was trying to just do marketing and it turned into a huge monetary success where they've sold so many bikes that it was, there's this limit where, you know, if you just try something, you don't know. But I don't know, maybe for me, I guess failing is kind of fun and you just reframe it. I just call it reframing. I don't know.
And I think that this town is a hard place to fail. And I think that it kind of goes back to, you know, the analogy I use often is it's like a family where, you know, you grow up with your brothers and sisters and your brother is, you know, horribly disorganized. And so you're always having to, you know, remember all the things as you're walking out the door, and you've had to do that since he was a kid. And suddenly he's a grown-up and he's going for a job that's all about organization. And you're like, heck no. You know, you're telling everyone, don't hire him, he's not good at organization. When you know people so intimately, then you hold them in a particular light, and it's hard for you to see them in their growth opportunity. And I think that this community, if there's one news article about you, everybody sees it, and that's who they think that you are at that from there then on. You know, I was thinking earlier in the conversation, and I don't mean to jinx you at all, Matt, but Matt is doing brilliant things right now. And Matt might run into a big roadblock, and suddenly he's not everybody's babe anymore. And at that point, that's the very moment that we should remember he's got chutzpah. This guy knows how to take an idea and execute. And who cares whatever failed? Look at all of the times he was able to accomplish. He's where we want to put our energy and our money. So I think that it is, as a small community, a dangerous place because we are too familial, and we need to recognize that there's a lot of growth. Where the Economic Development Corporation right now is in a search for a new executive director. And we have a number of candidates, and I've already started receiving calls about different candidates, and, you know, hey, remember that she failed in blah, blah, blah. And I just, and the other calls, this is the one you must hire. But it's just so incestuous that as professionals in this community, we need to recognize that, respect that, but respectfully decline that, and start from the beginning at each opportunity and look at who's in front of you and take the opportunity at that moment.
I think we have time for one more question. Anyone else? I want to give a chance to somebody new if there's no others. Diane, did you? Sorry.
Someone want to put a plug in for the innovation celebration coming up?
Uh-oh, the date. What's the date?
The 27th.
Vote for Matt. Collab.
There's a number of us so the Innovation Celebration, I would say, is one of my very, very favorite events that happens in this community. We, in fact, as a company, we require that all of our employees go to it because there's so much inspiration that happens there. You'll be introduced to technologies, groups, teams, successes that you have no idea are happening around you, and the vastness of it. You will really, really be blown away. So, Eric, maybe you can do the plug of when, where, what, and how.
February 27th.
February 27th.
NCSA.
At what time?
It is at
5 p.m. NCSA, February 27th. And you do not need to RSVP. It's lovely if you do, but you do not need to RSVP. And Pixo is known for showing up with swag of some sort. And I will say, just a teaser, we are hitting it this time. We've got the coolest swag, so you've got to come out and see us.
I think, just very quickly, sir.
You mentioned this incestuous relationship. Do you see issues with the university and their attempts to establish kind of a foothold in the near west side of where it is? They're going to put tech centers and it's going to interface with all the businesses up in Chicagoland. Do you view that as drawing away from us, or is it going to benefit you or not?
So I think all of us might have answers to that. I would say personally that I do think that whenever there's a real stronghold, then we all want to question them and question ourselves to ensure that the opportunities are open to all and that, you know, that it's really equal opportunity, and we need to have attention on that. As a technology business in this community, I will say that in particular, Laura Frerich's leadership of Research Park has changed our lives. She has opened us to a level of collaboration and integration with the University of Illinois that we, even, you know, my father being a professor and growing up here and raising this company here, I never recognized the benefit. And so I hold Research Park in the highest regard and wanted to continue to do what it's doing for us as a business to continue to grow.
All right, please join me in thanking our panelists.